a sword at their side, walking through a quiet village, ready to defend with honor. But the true history of the samurai is much more complex. The samurai were a warrior class that rose during Japan's medieval period. For centuries, they served powerful landowners known as daimyo. Their role was not simply to fight. They were soldiers, strategists, officials, and eventually members of Japan's ruling class. The word samurai comes from a term meaning person who